What's going on there, YouTube? And welcome to Fresh Comic Stories, where we sit down and cover different kinds of comic book stories, where we cover stories from Marvel, DC, and even IDW. But today, we are going to jump back over to Marvel Comics, where we are going to continue our coverage over the Ultimate Marvel Universe, where we are going to pick up with Ultimates 3. And this is the book that sets up Ultimatum, the big Marvel event that literally changed Ultimate Marvel completely. Now, Ultimates 3 is a book that a lot of people do not like, and as we go through this story, you might see why. And so if you like today's comic book review, please leave me a like down below and also subscribe to the channel for more content to come in the near future. But I do hope you enjoy today's video. Now we're going to jump into the first battle of this story with Venom randomly attacking the base of the Ultimates. And the reason why I am skipping over the first couple pages is because, well, it was just the Ultimates watching the sex tape of Iron Man and Black Widow because they were dating before Black Widow betrayed the team back in Ultimates 2. Now, something you are going to see is that Black Panther is on the team now, and this was done back in, I want to say, Ultimate Captain America Annual #1. Which we did skip over, but he joined the Ultimates in that book because he was being mentored by Captain America. Now, Venom does not spend much time fighting against Black Panther, he just throws him across the city. Now, the second thing we also see is Valkyrie. And the last time we saw her character, she was powerless. She had no powers. And she was part of the team called Defenders, which was just a group of people who wanted to be heroes, but of course could not be. Now, that was back in Ultimates 2, but it was never explained how she gained powers and joined the Ultimates until a later comic that takes place after Ultimatum. But just to let y'all know, she gained her powers through Loki. He was the one who gave her powers, and we will touch base on that in a later story. Also, something to point out is that she's now dating Thor, and we just learned that in this book. Now, getting back into the main story, we see Venom attacking the home of the Ultimates looking for someone. And we know that he is looking for a female, but it's not Wasp nor is it Valkyrie. Now, the last time we saw Venom, he was captured in Ultimate Spider-Man, the War of the Symbiote storyline, which we covered. But he was captured by Ultimate Beetle, and then Beetle flew back over to Latveria, the home of Dr. Doom. And so this leads to a bunch of questions. Why is Venom here? Who is Venom looking for? Also, is Venom now working for Dr. Doom? Except we do not get none of those answers, mainly because Thor hits Venom and turns him into a pile of goo. This leads into the next day, where we pick back up at the base of the Ultimates again, where this is the part where we finally get Marvel saying that Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver are dating. Even though they are siblings, they are a couple. This was always hinted on or tiptoed around in earlier stories, except this book basically says, yes, they are a couple. And Captain America's like, no, that is not okay. But then you have Wasp try to explain to him how things work these days. Yeah, Ultimate Marvel for you. But anyways, Hawkeye is worried that if the public finds out about them dating, going to make the team look worse in the eye of the public, especially now since Tony Stark and Black Widow's sex tape got out. And we also find out that Captain America does not trust Wasp anymore because back in Ultimates 2, she lost interest in Steve and started to see her ex-husband, Hank Pym. Speaking of Hank Pym, we actually pick up with Wasp going to check up on her man, Hank Pym, where she is just going on about how she is worried about the state of the team right now, when she realized that he is not responding back to her, and she goes to check up on him and she finds out that there is foam around his mouth and a bunch of pills as well, making it seem like that he had just overdosed and now he's out of the picture for this story. This is where we pick up with the twins Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, and we see them outside spending time with one another. And this is supposed to be a moment where the twins were supposed to be able to go out and not worry about anything. Except that is when a bullet is fired, and of course, with Quicksilver's speed, he was able to save himself and his sister. Except more bullets are fired, and Quicksilver is trying to protect his sister, stop these bullets, and call in the rest of the Ultimates. And this leads into the big moment of the book, and really the main plot point of this story, because one bullet is able to go through the hand of Quicksilver and then kills the Scarlet Witch. And so now the question is, who killed the Scarlet Witch? Now we jump over to Spider-Man, and there is somewhat a good reason why we are seeing Ultimate Spider-Man in this book, because Venom attacked the base of the Ultimates. Also, Venom threw Black Panther in this direction, and so you have Hawkeye out here to see where Black Panther is at, because he never came home last night. And since Venom is a Spider-Man villain, Hawkeye came here to see Spider-Man to see if he knows something. Except Hawkeye does not ask in a nice way. Instead, he starts a battle with Spider-Man because that makes sense to him. Now Hawkeye is able to defeat Spider-Man and tells him why he is here while holding a gun to his head. And you have Captain America stop Hawkeye to tell him to head back to the base of the Ultimates, and he will continue looking for Black Panther. This is where we pick up with Quicksilver rushing into the home of the Ultimates and taking his sister to the medical room. And this is going to lead to more problems for the Ultimates, because when he gets into the room, of course, Wasp is there with Hank Pym, since he overdosed earlier on drugs and hoping he will bounce back. That is when she sees the body of the Scarlet Witch on the other bed, and Quicksilver asks why no one came to help him. He called for help and no one answered. And this leads to Wasp telling Quicksilver that they never got a call and explain she will help figure out who did this. That is when you have Quicksilver say his father was right, that if him and his sister had stayed with the Brotherhood of Mutants, none of this would happen. And of course, his father being Magneto. And after he said that, the alarm goes off, telling them there is trouble. Of course, the trouble is the arrival of the Brotherhood of Mutants. And so this leads into the team trying to get ready to defend themselves. And we pick up with Tony Stark, where we see that Tony is a drunk, that he is now an alcoholic because of the death of Black Widow. Except in earlier stories, he was a functional drunk, still able to do work and save the day. But in this story, apparently he can't. But he thinks he sees the Black Widow, except it is not. It's just Mystique. And Wasp knocks her out. And that snaps Iron Man to get together and help his team win this fight. That is when we pick up with Thor and Valkyrie, because again, they are dating, except they were doing the dirty when the alarm was going off. And so this leads to them seeing what is happening. But the problem is they get greeted by Lorelei, and I really hope I pronounced that name correctly. But she is this new character who has the ability to control men with her hypnotic powers, which leads to her controlling Thor and making him fight Valkyrie. And there is a Lorelei in the main Marvel universe, except she is actually an Asgardian like Thor. And so this is a huge difference because she is a mutant in this universe. But then we jump over to Hawkeye and Captain America fighting against the clones of Jamie Madrox, the guy who is able to make constant clones of himself. But you have them fighting these clones, but this leads into a battle where Sabretooth tries to take on Captain America, which we do get a pretty cool fight. But all of these fights were a way to keep all of the Ultimates distracted. Because while the Ultimates are fighting against the Brotherhood of Mutants, you have Magneto visit Quicksilver. And in this universe, their father and son relationship is a whole lot worse than their main Marvel Universe counterparts. Like Magneto sometimes tries to kill his own son. But you have Magneto offer Quicksilver to rejoin the Brotherhood so they can solve the big question: who killed the Scarlet Witch? And so you have Quicksilver join. And as soon as Quicksilver joined Magneto, you have Quicksilver use his powers of super speed to grab all the members of the Brotherhood to get them out of there and go back home to the Savage Land with Magneto. And Wasp knows that Quicksilver has switched sides, and so this leads to her wondering, what should they do now? This is where you have Wolverine appear and tell the Ultimates that they have a big problem now, and he is here to help them with their new big problem. Now this leads to Wolverine explaining that their problem is that Pietro called Magneto right after the Scarlet Witch died, which honestly makes sense because Scarlet Witch died in the middle of the city, and then Quicksilver speed got her back to the home of the Ultimates in what, 5 minutes? And in those 5 minutes, he possibly called Magneto because as soon as they got back home to the Ultimates, hey, who appeared? The Brotherhood of Mutants and Magneto himself. And so you have Wolverine saying Pietro called his father before he came back home to the base of the Ultimates. And then you have Wolverine say, I am going to tell you the true origin of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, because Wolverine says those two people are actually his children. This is where the story jumps back in the past, where we see Wolverine is lost in the Balkan Mountains, where he just wanders around, except right when he was about to pass out, he was saved by Magda, the mother of both Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. And she takes him back home, and of course, we all know what happened next. They got their freak on, but while they were getting their freak on, of course, that is when Magneto arrives home to see his wife banging another man, and makes him use his powers and send Wolverine out of the house to be lost deep in the mountains. Except when Wolverine meets Magneto again in the Savage Land, they both act like they never met, even though Wolverine and Magneto know that one of them could be the father to the twins. And this is also the first time Wolverine met his children. But this leads into Magneto telling Wolverine that he wants Wolverine to kill Quicksilver, mainly because he thinks Quicksilver is weak, and Wolverine agrees to kill him because Wolverine is trying to join the Brotherhood of Mutants. And so this leads into Wolverine actually going after Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch, where he is able to stab Quicksilver, but of course not kill him. Except this is the moment we learn how powerful the Scarlet Witch is in this universe. And the reason why I say this is because in the Savage Land, there are dinosaurs. And Scarlet Witch told Nick Fury that these dinosaurs appeared because Magneto was doing experiments. In reality, dinosaurs appeared in the Savage Land because of the Scarlet Witch. She brought dinosaurs from the past into the present day. Her reality warping powers did all of that. Now this leads to the Ultimates breaking up into two teams. Hawkeye, Black Panther, Wolverine, Thor, and Valkyrie go to the Savage Land to go after Magneto, while the rest, which is Wasp, Captain America, and Iron Man, stay here to investigate the murder scene to learn who killed the Scarlet Witch. Now while the first team is flying off, this is where you have Wolverine ask, is that really Black Panther? Like he cannot tell by just looking at him, which we find out why he asked that question later on. Now when the first team leaves, we see Wasp be greeted by Iron Man, where you have her questioning where has he been, where he tells her he took care of the Blob, but he also went to the crime scene where Scarlet Witch was killed at. And so you have him tell Wasp that the bullet was made to kill the Scarlet Witch, no matter what. and the company who made this bullet was none other than Stark Enterprise. And Wasp is confused after he says that, and so she wants him to explain what he meant by that. And that is when you find out that this is not Iron Man. This is some robot. When the face mask gets taken off, all you see is all of these circuits, telling us that this is just some robot in front of the Wasp right now. This is where we pick up with the Ultimates team arriving into the Savage Land, and we learn that Wolverine told the team he has help waiting for him in the Savage Land. This is where we get the first introduction of Kazar and Shauna in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. And I am not going to really sit down here and explain the main Marvel Universe counterpart to these characters, because honestly, they're not that important anymore. But this is where we learned that when Magneto was still working with Charles Xavier, they were trying to find a home for mutants to go to, a place away from humans. Except when they were flying over to the Savage Land, something happened to their plane and they crashed. Where of course they find the Savage Land, and it wasn't Magneto who just randomly found the Savage Land and then showed Charles Xavier. They found it together. But when they crashed, they met people who lived in the Savage Land, where they were trying to build a bond with Magneto. But we learned that over time, the people of the Savage Land were nice to Magneto. Except when more and more people came to the Savage Land, Magneto decided it was time to kill the people of the Savage Land off because they were humans, which he did except these last two people, Kazar and Shauna. And so this leads us back over to Wasp. And the last time we saw Wasp, she thought she was talking to Tony Stark in his Iron Man suit, but to come to find out that it was really a robot pretending to be Iron Man. And so right now we pick up with this robot trying to kill Wasp. That is when we see Captain America appear, seeming like he is here to save the day, that he is here to protect her. Except we find out that this is not Captain America, that this is a robot as well. We find out because Hank Pym as Ant-Man stopped this robot from killing the Wasp. But we do not get the chance to learn more about the robots because we jump back over to the Ultimate team in the Savage Land, where we see Hawkeye doing his thing, killing clones of Jamie Madrox. Except that is when we see Sabretooth get the jump on Hawkeye, where we see him badly injure Hawkeye as a way to remove this character for the rest of the story. But you have Kazar save Hawkeye from Sabretooth and take him back to the Ultimate ship to get him patched up. We then get to see Black Panther and Wolverine as a team running through the Savage Land, where once again we see that Wolverine knows something about Black Panther, but does not tell us because that is when the Juggernaut appears, where this leads to him wrecking our two heroes, and now they have to focus on stopping him. Now we jump over to Valkyrie and we see her flying around, where she is having a good time flying around for some good reason. Except something happens where she falls off her Pegasus and falls in a pit of fire, where we come to find out that Mastermind, the mutant who has the ability to control people's senses, and so he makes her see and feel like she is some kind of nightmare. We also see that Pyro is here as well. Apparently, he went from good guy to bad guy after the ending of the Ultimate Apocalypse storyline we covered last week. Just don't know why he made the switch. Now this leads to my favorite moment in this book, well, one of them, where you have Thor trying to make his big attack against Magneto. Except when he finds Magneto, Magneto reminds him what his powers is. He can control metal. And so Thor Hammer is basically powerless against Magneto. And so this leads to Magneto kind of beating down on Thor. But we then jump over to Wasp once again, and we see her and Hank Pym sneaking around the mansion, explaining that everything that has been happening is his fault. The death of the Scarlet Witch, and also all of these robots appearing out of nowhere. This is where you have Hank Pym show us a room of a man making more robots of the Ultimates, where you have Hank Pym explain to Wasp in the vents where no one can see them that the man in the room making the robots is apparently their son. This is where we learn this man who is making the robots of the Ultimates is really Ultron. Now, this is not Ultron's first appearance. He appeared back in Ultimates 2, where he was just a super soldier robot, except something changed in him over time from that book to this book, where he went crazy and he fell in love with the Scarlet Witch. Kind of like how the Vision and the Scarlet Witch were a couple in the main Marvel universe. Except in this universe, Ultron was just a creeper. He loved the Scarlet Witch so much it changed his program. And when he saw Quicksilver and her becoming a couple, he knew he could never have her. And so he had to make a call. Kill her off so no one can have her. And so the Venom we saw earlier in the beginning of our video was an android as well. The bullet that killed Scarlet Witch, yeah, that was him too. All of these robots we've been seeing in the last few minutes, yeah, that was him as well. And we come to find out that he was the one who drugged Hank Pym. Also, he's the one who released the sex tape of Iron Man and Black Widow, knowing it would make Tony Stark become a drunk. And then, after that, he captured Tony Stark. This leads to Ultron and his army of robots going to the Savage Land and just joining everyone there to fight against Magneto. But his game plan now is to replace the Ultimates. But before we see what they do, we actually jump back over to Black Panther and Wolverine, who were fighting against the Juggernaut. And he was actually kicking their butt. Except the last minute, Wolverine and Black Panther were able to defeat him. This is where we learn that this is not Black Panther. This is actually Captain America. This whole time he was going around pretending to be Black Panther. This is where you realize while reading the book, you never saw Captain America and Black Panther at the same time. Reason why? Because Captain America was pretending to be Black Panther, so Black Panther is able to go back home to Wakanda. And so the whole time the Ultimates thought they had Black Panther on their team, he was really never there. But they find this out right now. We then pick back up with Valkyrie, where she was being controlled by Mastermind. Well, we get a quick 2-page setting where she wakes up and kills Mastermind, and then cuts off the hands of Pyro for payback for what they did to her. Now this is where we finally end this story, or begin to wrap it up, because we pick up with the Ultimates, Magneto, Ultron, and his army having this weird 3-way battle. 3 different sides just duking it out in the middle of the Savage Land, where it seems like a pretty even match for all sides. And also to point out is that the real Wasp, Hank Pym, and Iron Man came to the Savage Land to help deal with the Ultron and Magneto problem. And this leads into a few pages of awesome fight scenes. But we do get to see Hank Pym kill off the Ultron robot by just pulling off his head. And there goes Ultron. We never see him again in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, if I remember correctly. This leads to the final moment where you have the Ultimates wanting to move in on Magneto to bring him in. Except this leads into the moment where you have Magneto go on this rant about how great mutants are and how they are going to take over the world. This is where Hawkeye goes for the final kill by trying to shoot Magneto. Except at the very last minute, you have Quicksilver take the bullet for Magneto, which ends up killing Quicksilver. And so now both Magneto's children are dead. And now Magneto leaves and you have the Ultimates kind of retreat for now. One thing to point out is that Magneto does take the hammer of Thor with him, which you would think it would mean something, but honestly, it doesn't at all. Now this leads to the final 2 pages, where the first page show us Magneto saying a final goodbye to his dead children. but this leads into Magneto saying that he is going to make the Ultimates pay the ultimate price. Then we come to find out that everything that has happened so far, Ultron was really not the person behind everything, except the person who was behind all of this was Doctor Doom. And this is not Victor Van Dam Doctor Doom. This is actually the mother of Susan and Johnny Storm, because the first Doom is still trapped in the Squadron Supreme universe, except before he left, he told Mary Storm to become Doctor Doom for him. And so this is not the original Ultimate Marvel Doctor Doom. This is the second version of Ultimate Marvel Doctor Doom. And this is where we are going to end today's video. And so guys, please leave me a like down below and also subscribe for more comic book stories like this in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read? Well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'm out of here and I will see y'all in the next comic book video. Later, guys.